It's breakfast time on Saturday and I am making myself some breakfast before I go to the studio. And I wanted to show you guys this awesome, wonderful, delicious, and sweet seeded watermelon. Yes, I said seeded. I prefer seeded watermelons because they're not genetically modified and they're sweeter. Seeded watermelons are sweeter than seedless watermelons, and you just kind of work around the seeds and make a nice smoothie out of them. You don't need to even put any water in it. Just put your watermelon in there and blend it without anything and then drink it. It's amazing. It's so good for you, and the seeds are even good for you. So this is really great. When you go and find a watermelon, because they're in season now, look for one with seeds. And you know what? They are hard to find. So get your breakfast going. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jan from orJANics 50nRaw. And I'm just here listening to some 50nRaw, eating my lunch, drinking some kombucha. You know, it's funny. When I first went raw, I used to love eating these nuts. And now I just don't really like them anymore. It's just funny how your taste buds change, and you know, something that you like one day and just love later on, you just might not even like again. And I do find that happens quite a lot with raw food. So I've gone to the farmer's market before I went to work and bought some little cucumbers, not like my cucumbers, little ones, because I'm going to make bread and butter pickles. I bought some more okra. I'm going to try and make some more okra chips by cutting them in half. Instead of putting them in the dehydrator whole, I'm going to cut them in half, like long ways. Drizzle olive oil and salt. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it real simple. Put them in the dehydrator till tomorrow sometime. I have bought some organic tomatoes as well, and I'm going to dehydrate those as well so I can save them for when I need a recipe that calls for a nice sun-dried tomato effect. So today in the studio, I took a watermelon and organic blueberry shake, like the one I had for breakfast this morning. That watermelon, I cut it up and made a smoothie out of it and took it to the studio to sell for my clients, and had some little samples out. And so I asked one of the clients if they would like a sample of the smoothie, and she's like, oh no, I can't eat watermelon, it's got too much sugar in it. And this, I believe, is a really common misconception. Watermelon really gets a bum deal, a bad reputation when it really shouldn't have. A lot of people count carbohydrates. I have never counted carbohydrates. I know fruits and vegetables are good for me. I understand about simple and complex carbs. Complex carbs have got a lot of fiber in them. The more fiber there is in whatever you're eating, the slower the glucose will be released into the bloodstream. I do understand all that. Carbohydrates never have freaked me out, and they never will. But the glycemic index and glycemic load is something that you really have to understand to get the whole picture for weight loss. And when you look on the packages and you look at, oh, it's got so many carbs in it, well, you're only really understanding a very small part of that item's story, okay? You have to look at the fiber to begin with. And then if you have any understanding at all about glycemic index and glycemic load, it will help you to understand what to eat. Carrots have a very high glycemic index, so we can't have carrot juice, and people are afraid to drink carrot juice because it's going to spike up their blood sugar. Well, carrots might have a high glycemic index, but they have a low glycemic load, just like watermelon does. So I want to show you kind of glycemic index, glycemic load, what it is. Glycemic index indicates the rate at which carbohydrates are formed into glucose and released into the bloodstream. The faster the glucose is released into the bloodstream, the more the body will secrete insulin in response. So you have carbohydrates. Each one of these represents a carbohydrate. This represents the bloodstream, okay? So you have a carbohydrate. All carbohydrates turn into glucose in your body. So this is going to turn into glucose right now. So I have glucose now. It formed into glucose and is released into the bloodstream. Glycemic index indicates the rate. So it's either going to go slow or it's going to go fast, okay? So glycemic index measures the rate at which it converts from a carb to a glucose and how quickly it goes into the bloodstream, slow or fast. Glycemic load considers how many carbohydrates there are in a serving. Glycemic index does not do that. Glycemic load is much more accurate because it's considering the serving size. So if I have a serving size of all these carbohydrates and it converts them into glucose, okay, and I have this load of glucose released into the bloodstream, it's a huge load of carbohydrates. So when you dump it into the bloodstream, it's going to raise the insulin because there's so much of it. The glycemic load considers the speed that it is released into the bloodstream, but it also considers how much of the carbohydrates are converted. Glycemic index doesn't do that, okay? But you have most of the time glycemic index is a good indicator, but there are foods that have a high glycemic index, like watermelon. Watermelon, you have carbs in watermelon, converted into glucose and dumped into the bloodstream quickly. But the thing glycemic index doesn't tell you is that watermelon is mostly water. So it doesn't have a lot of carbs to convert over. So when these carbs of watermelon convert to glucose, the load, how much of a burden is dumped into the bloodstream is very little. Does that make sense? Glycemic load considers glycemic index and the amount of carbohydrates. Glycemic index only considers the speed that the carbs dump into the bloodstream. It's not accurate enough. So you have to look at glycemic load for a more accurate measurement of how it's going to affect the insulin. Got it? So anyway, I did put up like a bulletin board in my studio trying to teach them about watermelon, glycemic index, glycemic load. And you know, another thing about watermelon, it is one of the most alkalizing fruits that are available to us to eat, very alkalizing. It actually lowers your blood glucose. It has full of lycopene, which helps with men's prostate, helps keep the prostate cancer at bay. So that's what I want to talk about is glycemic index, glycemic load. So go get a whole watermelon and eat it up, okay? And it will not spike up your blood sugar, I promise. So I'm going to do some projects right now, and maybe I'll take some pictures or some clips for you guys. Bye. Okay, Kaden and I made these 2 quarts of bread and butter pickles, and I'll post the recipe below in case anybody wants to do. Now they have to ferment on the counter for 3 days. Now we're working on our okra chips, right, Kaden? Yes. Kaden's such a good helper.
Thank you.
Okay, so 2 trays of okra ready to go in the dehydrator. We took the okra, Kaden and I, we cut it in half and took the end off. And we did this 2 trays, and we did those in an hour. So, you can do it too. Bye. So it's time to go to bed. I hope I don't have nightmares because we just watched Jurassic Park. But what I have going on over here on the stove, well, the stove is off, so nothing's cooking, but it is culturing, is 2 quarts of bread and butter pickles. 1 quart of kefir. I've been making kefir all week, so because I'm going to be straining off the whey, making it from some smoothies. This is also kefir, but it's going through 2nd fermentation with fruit in it. I don't know if it's got mangoes, peaches, strawberries, and slivered almonds, and a little bit of stevia for the second fermentation. So actually I think the boys will eat this for breakfast, or I can make it into a popsicle. And then over here I needed beet kvass. I'm out of beet kvass. So actually all of those were very easy to put together. I just made the beet kvass in about 10 minutes, peeled the beets, put them in there with half a gallon. I put a tablespoon of salt and a quarter cup of kefir whey.
I was gonna ask, why do you keep them on the stovetop?
Just, I don't know.
I wondered if it was like when we're using the stove, if some of the heat would help.
If we ever do use the oven, it does warm it up, but the rest of the counter has got stuff all over it. So.
Oh, I thought there was some.
And I think it looks pretty.
There was some reason.
No, there is no reason. I just think it looks pretty.
Oh, okay.
Okay. My airlock seals are half full of water, just in case you want to know. And that's the carbon dioxide out, but doesn't let in any bacteria. So, oh, look what I got from my garden.
That is crazy.
Isn't this funny? Yes. I don't know, some people are giving me little dainty cucumbers, but I seem to only grow, these are supposed to be pickling cucumbers. I only get monsters out of mine, so it's okay with me. Good night, everybody.